Extreme weather alert. Stay indoors with the windows closed and the curtains drawn. Drink plenty of water. Avoid the sunlight. Check in on vulnerable relatives and above all else, try to keep cool. A red alert went out over the weekend advising us of what to do since my country really isn't used to these kinds of heat waves. I know many Americans and Australians will scoff at that, saying it's not even that bad, but you have to understand my country isn't really equipped to handle that kind of weather, but we're just talking about typical heat strokes. To be honest, I don't think any country can handle what we're facing right now. So, I did what any responsible person would do and stayed at home, making sure to cover all my windows with blackout blinds and stock up reasonably on water, looking to wait it out. I figured I'd spend a few days sweating indoors with the bladeless fan on, play some video games and try to focus on other things. But, as the day was creeping on, I realized very quickly something was very, very wrong. I'm not one for watching regular TV, but I do keep track of the news through my phone like most people. I got a push notification around 3 p.m. on the first day of the heat wave that stirred me from a heat-induced nap. I'd been leaning back in my leather recliner, clammy skin clinging to the leather like sticky paper and every part of me feeling hotter than it had done earlier. Breaking, all-time heat record broken, fires breaking out across the capital, water rationing now in place. Do not go outside. I clicked the notification and cast to my TV as I checked the local temperature. I almost choked on my water when I saw the number. 52 degrees Celsius or 125 degrees Fahrenheit being currently recorded. The air felt thicker just seeing that, and the video loaded with some commotion going on in the background, people jumping around and holding their hands up like weirdos. Nasty sunburns across their skin and one of them dropped to the floor likely from heat stroke before being hastily pulled off screen. In the center shot stood a young woman with no protection from the harsh rays as she held a thermometer with shaking hands, smoke practically rising from something around her. When she spoke, her voice was coarse as if the throat had been packed with sand. And as you can see, everyone at home, we've just reached a new record temperature here in the UK. Experts predict thousands could die in this unprecedented heat wave. Isn't it wonderful? Back to you. I did a double take in my recliner, leaning forward as my back burned and rewinding the broadcast. I took a better look at her as the makeup ran down her face, hair matted to her forehead and the business casual outfit clinging to her in what must have been a terribly constricting manner. But then I saw her expression and something in it unsettled me even more than her words. She was elated, eyes twitching and almost bubbling in the scorching heat as those uncanny words repeated again. Isn't it wonderful? I thought the poor girl had heat stroke and mentally begged the producers got her some immediate attention as the broadcast continued in the background, my mind so frazzled from the heat that I could barely think straight. I was tempted to grab a shower, but I remembered the rationing and thought I'm better off in front of the fan where it's at least semi-cooler. I've famously never done well with the heat and I didn't want to spend the evening with my head in the toilet. So, I grabbed my laptop and tried to socialize with friends to see how they were beating the heat. When I tried calling my mom, it was a garbled mess on the other side. The heat my phone was generating was enough to singe my ears, but I pushed through to try and understand what she was saying. Mom, you okay? Have you been drinking plenty of water? The sun. The sun? Yeah, it's really hot. Make sure you're indoors. No helping out in the garden. You know you're getting on in years. Honor. The sun. My hand instinctively dropped the phone as the feeling of skin boiling overwhelmed me, and as I did, the damn thing smashed on my wood floor, terminating the call. Naturally, I jerked forward to grab it and I realized just how bad things were. The pain started in my shoulders and rapidly descended down my back before spreading to my arms. It was my skin. It had began fusing to the leather and the strain of pulling against it felt like someone was flaying my skin. I screamed and the dehydration ripped at my throat to add a further agony. Slumping back, eyes glazing over and a combination of pain and heat exhaustion began to set in, I cast my eyes out the window for something to distract me. It felt like the air was swirling around outside. Infrastructure that should be stable began dancing and the very road itself twisted, bubbled and smoked. It was almost hypnotic in nature, captivating me. I don't know how long I'd been staring before I saw someone thought they'd begun to walk down the street wearing absolutely nothing. Every step took more off of their delicate flesh and small red and pink splotches littered the asphalt as they stood perpendicular to my window, staring up at me with a bright red face and that same grin the newscaster had. In that moment, terror took the place of fear within me and I was rooted to the spot. Something was definitely wrong with him. Slowly, methodically, purposefully, they lifted their arms above their head and arched the fingers into a crown as the eyes shot up towards the overbearing sun overhead, their chapped and torn lips mouthing those familiar words as what I think were tears fell down their face. Worship the conflagration. The man grinned and I watched his lips fleck and fall off, his cheeks blistering and popping, but his dedication never once wavering as he pulled his head down to look at me once more, jerking his head back as if to invite me out. His eyes. His poor eyes had been blinded, melted by the beauty of what he saw above him. Two thick milky fluids cascaded down his cheeks and matted in his mustache. I retched, but I had to look. I needed to see what drove him to this. My eyes began traveling up past his steadily burning, melting frame and towards that beautiful burning god in the sky enriching us with its loving heat. I began to glimpse its form in the sky and I honestly felt every inch of pain, exhaustion and trepidation fade away. It didn't even look like the sun, not the one we grew up with at least. It's hard to describe, but it was a form full of comfort. The color of the sky is a beautiful palette of maroon, garnet, and crimson. So much red, I'd never been happier to be in its presence. I don't know how long I sat there looking, but my head span after a while and ultimately, I succumbed to exhaustion and woke up a half hour ago with a clearer head and a frenzied thirst and a panic. I reached for the water on my side table, but drinking from it brought me no comfort. I may as well have been slurping gravel. I spat it out and somehow managed to reach my phone without causing myself any more pain. News notifications. State of emergency declared 3h ago. London ablaze with cleansing fire 2h ago. Missed calls. Mom, 28. Andy, 17. Unknown, 9. Sweat dripped down my forehead and the panic increased. While I was able to read what was on the screen, it wouldn't respond to commands to make calls. The damn thing was still too hot to hold for more than a minute. I tried in vain to click the voicemail function before putting it by my table to let it load. Turning on the TV, it flickered to life and I realized it must have still been on the news channel as I recognized the banner at the bottom. It was a live stream of the sun. The garbled voices through my television seemed to be reveling in the madness, overjoyed we were all burning and that it was going to be even hotter tomorrow. It made my head spin. I decided to turn back to the window for comfort. My sole refuge in this sweltering environment. The man in the street is gone, a small pool of something left in his spot, but nothing more. Looking around, every house was practically dancing in its spot, moving to a rhythmic beat only they could hear. In a couple of partially covered windows, I could see my neighbors prostrating themselves before the sun, screaming in its direction amid faces mixed with agony and joy. The TV abruptly shutting off with a loud pop snapped me from my stupor and I began to hear the voicemails crackle through my burning phone. All of them telling me to come outside and bask in the flames. I couldn't resist. It felt as if an imaginary force was bringing me to the window. I looked out, the curtain fully drawn back and I stared up at the broad strokes of red and yellow across the sky. I saw it. It saw me. Our son has a face. A beautiful face that is permanently stuck between total joy and that of apoplectic rage. It's so close that I can make out the sun spots rising and bursting from its amber surface, thousands of small human-like shapes ascending to meet it. My mother's voice rings out over the voicemail function. No longer saying to come outside or honor the sun. She says she's been trying to reach me and is terrified I have heat stroke, that I'm not completely stuck to my chair and I've got to drink some water. I don't know what the man stood outside my house thought, but I know he experienced divinity. And I want to experience it too. Maybe, after reading this, some of you will as well. Now, I'm going to free myself from this leathery prison even if it tears my flesh to the muscle. I will crawl out of my house if my limbs fail me. I will stand in front of that sun. And I will praise it.